Item B, Chair's remarks.
I have none. Next item.
Item C, approval of the minutes from the April 2nd, 2024 meeting.
Motion is in order. So moved. Moved by Commissioner Baydun, supported by Commissioner Marecki. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, this action stands approved. Next item on the agenda.
Item D, unfinished business. There is none listed. Moving to item E1 under new business. Requesting commission approval of the 2024 Wayne County Equalization Report as required by sections 34 and 37 of the General Property Tax Act.
Okay, Chair recognizes Scott. Is Scott?
God is here.
Members of the committee, Chair, good morning or good afternoon. Scott Vandenbergel, Assessment and Equalization Director, Wayne County. What you have before you is a recommendation for county equalization of assessed values, the annual process that the County Commission is statutorily charged with completing. I've got a few overview points, if I may.
Absolutely.
At your pleasure. The assessed value for the county is up from about 72 billion with the B to 80 billion with the B. So that's about 11% plus change in assessed value. And it's across all classes of property in all local units. So another stellar year for the real estate market continuing on. I know before COVID, nobody knew what was going to happen, but things have continued to be very strong. Especially at the residential property class level. And our tax base, our taxable value has gone up from about 52 billion to about 56 billion. And that $4 billion change represents about roughly 8% or so increase. So the taxable base is growing by 8%. So that is basically an 8% increase in our paycheck, if you will. The tax revenue coming into the county. So that's about a 31 million with an dollar change year over year for tax revenue. So that'll be definitely something that is on the right side of things and obviously helpful to the county's endeavors.
So Scott, thank you for this report. Also, I wanted to make a note that I did contact you last week, and I think it'll be an educational moment for this committee and the commissioners, some of the information that we were able to that you were able to share with me. I got a number of phone calls over the past few weeks from residents and individuals regarding a report that was done by a group, and it was dealing with the assessments or overassessment of certain classifications in the assessment classifications in the city of Detroit. And they were calling because the Detroit City Council a couple of weeks ago passed a resolution asking for the county treasurer to take an action associated with the information that came out that report. We've heard in recent years a number of different opinions and thoughts associated with the city of Detroit's overassessment, underassessment, and the whole area or question as it relates to assessment. And so I asked Scott, one, the treasurer's office is doing what the treasurer is going to do in response to not only the report, but just also the action of city council. So the treasurer's office, from what I understand, the county treasurer is looking into and has taken some action that I guess will be forthcoming. I asked Scott, okay, in regards to all that question surrounding assessment, I understand our role here. Oftentimes it seems to be procedural and we act on it. I basically asked Scott, is this just a receive and file item? And Scott absolutely said it is not. Impact that we in the role that we have, but also how he determined that little pie scenario, and I appreciate that conversation. So I wanted you to just basically touch on the statutory role in this and what this action is that we do each year.
Yes, sir. The county commission's role is twofold. It's to is, as I've mentioned in the letter of transmittal, it's to equalize assessments. In other words, to ensure that they're at the statutory level of assessment according to the state constitution and state statutes that implement the constitutional provisions. And then apportionment of tax rates. So that's something that we talk about in the fall. So a property tax bill or property tax revenue is a function of the taxable value, the tax base, the thing that has value, and then the rate to charge the tax or the millage rate. So that A times B equals C, C being the tax bill or tax revenue. And the county commission has overview over both of those two inputs in the algebra problem, the A and the B, the assessments and taxable values and the tax rates. So it's a very important charge that the commission has that affects our constituency all across the county in the some 800,000 or 900,000 parcels that are on the assessment roll. The county commission's function is to ensure that what the equalization process is as your technical advisors, we measure the level of assessment for each class of property and for each local unit. So we're doing what we call an equalization study, and we're doing sub-analyses at the local level and at the property class level. And we're observing either through appraisals or through sales studies what the level of assessment is. So the necessary level of assessment is statutorily is 50%. So we would analyze and see one community is at 44%, one's at 62%, and so on and so forth. And then what the county commission's role is, and the thing that we're making the recommendations to the commission for is what it would take to bring the assessment level observed in that community up to or down to 50%. So each community has its own relative assessment increase or decrease. Lately, it's been an increase to reach that level of assessment. So we would tell the local assessors, actually, you, the commission members, would tell the local assessors, raise your assessments 10% over here. This party over on the other side of town, raise or lower your assessments by 5%, and so on and so forth. And then eventually everybody would come to the 50% level of assessment. And that's what the county commission is doing, is having everybody be equalized at 50%. According to whatever is necessary.
In recent years, have you had to make any sort of modifications? So if everybody's been as close to the 50% without needing any additional advice?
Well, almost exclusively, it's been recommended to the commission that it equalize as assessed. In other words, an equalization factor of 1.0. That's characteristic of the case. The local assessors, if you will, do their jobs properly. They hit the mark, and then we verify that, and then everything is fine. Once in a while, someone doesn't do an input in the computer properly, or one thing or the other happens, and they make a minor mistake, and the commission is engaged to, add or subtract value in the aggregate and fix the mistake, if you will. But normally the process is adhered to at the local level.
Okay, so great to hear. And so I thank you for your conversation last week and the information you provided since. Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott, does all cities have an assessor? And if they don't have one, then who does it?
Yes, ma'am. All cities have to have an assessor. It happens to be that all 43 of the local units do have a person in their employee or contract. Formerly, I mean, as you know, our name of our division is assessment and equalization. The county would perform that function. If so directed, it has in the past performed that function contractually at the local level. It doesn't happen to be the case that we are doing that function contractually for any local units right now. I actually feel it works better for the local units to handle their own affairs because, as your instrument, we would be checking and balancing the work of somebody else. And there's a little bit of a conflict that we would both do and check ourselves the work. So I feel that it's best that we allow that function to be handled locally so that we have an impartial overview over it on your behalf.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Baidoon, then Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. Scott and I have talked about this many times. I had Scott on my show last year when we do the property assessment discussion in the city of Dearborn. Scott, you mentioned something that you advise each assessor to increase certain percentage. But did I hear you say correctly that you will tell the assessor which neighborhood to increase? Or I thought it was up to the assessor. Let's say you tell Dearborn increase by 11% and they will go into the different areas, like Citron. Some areas will get 5%, some might get 8%, but it will all average out to what you advise them to increase the assessment by. Am I correct on that aspect?
Yes, sir. That's exactly correct. We would determine just the aggregate level of assessment for each class of property, residential, industrial, commercial, and so on, within each local unit. So we would, as you said, we would say to Dearborn assessor, raise your residential property class by 10% so that you can hit the 50% level of assessment. And then he or she, he in this case, Jacob, would go neighborhood to neighborhood and parcel by parcel. We have no jurisdiction over neighborhood by neighborhood or parcel by parcel, sometimes much to the chagrin of the taxpayers or elected officials. But at any rate, we are determining the size of the pie, as I mentioned with Chair Kinloch, how big the pie is every year, how much that expands or contracts. And then, so drawing the analogy out, if we're in the bakery, the local assessor is the person with the pie knife or the slicing up the pie. In other words, determining the individual pieces of the whole that constitute each neighborhood or each parcel. So what, in summary, what you said is absolutely true.
Yeah, for the benefit of for my colleagues and whoever is listening, I'll put my real estate hat on. Everyone who owns a property in the state of Michigan this year will see a 5% increase in their taxable value, and that's because of the Headley Amendment. We saw that the year prior and this year. I think this is the second year since Proposal A was passed in 1994 that we reached the 5%, which was allowed by law. And last year, I think the inflation rate was more than 5%, but because of the cap, it was at 5%. What was it again this year? Well, also, it was higher than 5%?
It was 5.1.
Okay,
And
so
last year was 7.9, but then that caps out at the ceiling of 5% for what is actually applied to the taxable value.
what's interesting in my personal residence, last year, the assessor lowered my assessed value. And again, this year, he lowered my assessed value. I went in front of the board and I appealed to raise my assessed value to where I think my property should be valued at. And they were shocked. I said, listen, my house is worth a lot more than what you have it at. So I wanted to be in line with the rest of my neighbors. Yeah. So, but one more question. On the increase in the different classes, I know the residential was a lot higher than commercial, obviously. And the industrial class was about what, 4 to 5% increase?
I think it was in the low threes across the entire county.
Yeah.
In your district, I don't know the specific number for that, but across the entire county, it was 3.3 or something in that order.
And also, it might be worth noting here that the millage rate that the county assesses has been at 5.9%. Am I correct? For many years.
Yes, for the charter operating.
For the charter operating, it's been like this for over 35 years, I believe, and we haven't had an increase.
Correct. Since 1981, since the
Yes.
charter was instituted, the original rate was 6.07 mils. And then incrementally over the course of years and years via the Headley provisions of rolling back the millage to allow for growth of the taxable value or tax base according to inflation, the revenue side, that number has incrementally been reduced or rolled down or rolled back, if you will.
Scott, have we reached the same level that we were at before the market crashed in 2008, 2009 in terms of taxable value? We have exceeded that. Am I correct?
Yes, this is actually the first year. I think it was 98% or something very close to 100 last year.
I know some cities already exceed, like Plymouth, Northville, they've already exceeded their lowest level when the
Yes.
market crashed.
Right, yeah, yes. In the aggregate for the county as a whole,
Yes.
the percentage has now exceeded 100%. So 2024, 17 years later, we're back to where we were in 2007 with the valuation for our tax base.
Yeah.
Of course, there's been 17 years of inflation and loss of purchasing power. So the county commission is doing much more with much less. We're doing the same with much less at a minimum, despite all those years of inflation and purchasing power loss. So
And-
it's a real testament to that.
And Commissioner Anderson and I
possibility.
did our small part to make sure the taxable value went up in Wayne County this year. Yeah, as real estate brokers.
Yeah, I mean, that's been, I mean, it was fabulous that the county was actually able to realize the full permissible 5%. And then actually, you know, if you look at the executive summary sheet, the taxable value went up by about 7.8%. And that's attributable to uncapping during sale properties and then new development and, you know, the net of new development over demolitions. So it's the tax base has increased very substantially this year. And that pushed the aggregate number over 100% of where we were, like you said, 17 years ago.
Thank you, Scott.
Any additional questions? Any additional, oh, yes, you had an ask.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, Scott, I wanted to ask, prior to having to reach out to the local assessors, how many outliers did you have that were either above or below the 50%? Do you know?
All 43. It's, I mean, and that's not a bad thing. It's within an appreciating market, an assessment that was dead on last year. Going forward into this year, that's basically old news, if you will, because the market's been appreciating. So because we're looking backward in time for a 24-month sales study, what was formerly a good assessment, it's an annual process to continue to have a good assessment. In other words, to have that assessment be at the statutory level of 50%, typically in an appreciating market. Every year, we're telling the local assessor to bring those assessments up to reach the 50% because properties are going up, therefore the assessment has to go up to keep that 50% pace with it. So that is, it's not a bad thing or an anomaly that a local assessor would have an observed assessment level of less than 50%, indicating an increase in market conditions. It would be the norm, actually.
So your report is telling us then that all the property values are where they should be at 50% in Wayne County
Yes, our
for all
recommendation.
classes.
Yes, our recommendation is that it would take X and Y and Z percentages appropriately for classes and units to have them in accordance with the 24-month look back period. Set those assessments to that level. And then we measure that after they turn in the assessment rolls, which is kind of what we're doing right now. We get this big inundation of data and assessment rolls and reports and everything. So, I mean, we're going through and we're making sure that 2 + 2 = 4, but that we're also going through and ensuring that each of these communities and classes has reached that 50%.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Any additional questions? We're going to take this item separately. A motion is in order, and it's been moved by Commissioner Baidoon, supported by Commissioner Clemente. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, this item stands approved. The next item on the agenda, thank you, Scott.
Thank you. I don't want to steal the thunder from Director Kendrivis for the Parks Millage, but I mean, if you like, I can stay here for.
Oh, yes, would you please?
If-
Yeah,
If it's your pleasure.
I would like for you to stay here. It's okay. So who's here to speak to this is,
I got it.
You
Huh?
gotta read
Read
it
it, number
first.
two.
Okay, read it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Item number 2, requesting commissioner approval of placing the Charter County of Wayne's Parks Millage Renewal Proposition P on the ballot for the primary election to be held on August 6, 2024.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Who's here to speak to item number 2? I know earlier we had Alicia Bradford who was on Zoom. So okay, yeah, so 1 second. She's still on Zoom. Okay,
Chair,
thank you.
yes, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. Alicia Bradford, DPS Parks Division Director. Thank you, and to the commission. And I do see Mr. Brown, who's there as well. This is a request, and on behalf of our DPS Director, Andy Kendrivis, and our Deputy Director, Elmika Steele. This is our request for our park millage allocation. We are funded through collection levy until the end of 2025, but this is a proactive movement in order to receive approval for our continual hopeful park millage for the operations of our park system that Wayne County operates and maintains, including the staffing operations for the park system and the capital projects that we invest in, including those 15 commission district and those community park projects that they represent.
Okay, thank you. And as you mentioned, we have Dr. Brown here, and we also have Scott as well as here. And so before I ask commissioners, are there any additional questions? My question to you, Scott, is with the assessed value going up, you know, should we anticipate, I guess it goes without saying, an increase in the overall funds attributed to the Parks millage?
Yes, in accordance with the taxable.
Okay.
In
You can
accordance
state
with
your name and, you know.
Pardon me, Scott Vandenbergel, Director of.
Is the mic on?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, stretch out a little bit. Okay. Let's try that again. Scott Vandenbergel, Director of Assessment and Equalization for Wayne County. To answer your question, yes, the taxable value of the county increased by 7.77%, I think it was. So that would commensurately increase the revenue for the parks millage by 8% or so. So what we were getting in 2023, we'd get once again for 24 plus 8. And then we would project probably through our model that would continue into 25. The millage itself is for the tax years of 5 tax years of 26 through 30. But we anticipate future trends as being on the positive.
Okay, so whoever able, I guess, appropriate person to answer the question. So each commission district is allocated $50,000. That is I think a bottom figure. How does that amount change, you know, for the purpose of anyone from the public who may be here? Or what causes that number to change, the 50,000 number to change, or does it change?
So, Mr. Chair, if I can, and then I probably will pitch it over to Scott as well. Just correction, each commissioner receives 15% of the collected tax revenue for their respective townships or cities that they represent. The Detroit Commission receives a minimum of 50,000, but the commission receives 15% of those tax collections, and then there's additional calculations. So the amount may vary depending on the tax collection for those communities that are represented under that district. And Scott can probably speak to it more eloquently than I can.
Okay,
Yes, for the
the
15.
formula, that formula component, that's what I'm interested in.
Yes,
Or
and
when
with
is
the
it
taxable
triggered?
value changing every year and potentially the millage rate changing every year, it hasn't really, but mainly attributable to the size of the taxable value or tax base. That what equates to 15% of the revenue for that millage is typically more than the 50,000 floor in most districts. I think it's 13 out of the 15 that receive in excess of 50,000, and then a couple are a little bit less than 50,000 mathematically, so that they come up to 50,000 for a couple of the districts, as I recall.
Okay. Okay, are there any additional questions? Yes. Commissioner Baker McCormick, and then I saw Commissioner Baydoun move forward, and Commissioner Anderson. And who? And okay, Commissioner Baker McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had questions about the formula for a couple of years because as our the tax rates increase or decrease, it would seem that our individual district amounts would vary. But is there, to the formula that you just talked about, is there a way that we can look at the more exact figures rather than saying, oh, this one is a little bit more and this one is not? I would be interested in really knowing the exact amount for my district in particular.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Okay, and on that, so there is a lag as relates to how you're calculating that 15% or how that 15% is being calculated, is it?
I mean, really immediately after the levies occur. Well, I mean, before then, because we know what the tax rates are, the commission sets the tax rates before the summer roll and the winter roll. But yes, there really wouldn't necessarily be an awful bit of a lag as much as the numbers can be known in advance. So we know what the taxable value is, or we soon will next week after the commission makes them the taxable values officially for the county as a whole in each of the 15 districts, what that specific taxable value is. We know what the millage is. So therefore we would know what 15% of that number would be.
Right.
And I believe Ms. Bradford possibly has it in front of her. I don't happen to have it at this moment, but we do, I mean, to be able to calculate who gets what and whether it's, needs to come up to 50 or it's more than 50, we do actually have a calculation so that your own district, for instance, could be observed for what that specific number is, or any of the other 14 districts. And
Yeah,
Okay,
pardon.
Ms. Bradford, you trying to
Thank you,
say,
Scott.
you recognize?
Sorry, thank you, Scott, Mr. Chair. And Scott is correct. But the recap is normally based on tax from a year prior. So it is not in real time, even though collection is real time, the information that's provided. So recap would be for 23-24 recap from 23-24 collection season. So it's usually a year prior that recap of collection, that percentage is calculated for each commission, but that is provided to me from the assessor's office and from the tax office on the collections of those particular communities. And then that 15% is calculated, and that is how the information is determined for each commission district. And there has been an increase. To note to Commissioner Baker McCormick, she received an increase this year above her $50,000 that she would traditionally get, because there has been an increase in the tax recap and that calculation reflected.
Okay. And so to
Continue.
that point, I just wanted to know what the calculation is. So whenever you get the opportunity to figure that out, and I know Ms. Bradford just said, there was an increase. If you could just send me that information, or other commissioners, I'm quite sure they're interested in knowing.
Yes, ma'am. I'll coordinate with Ms. Bradford and I'll run that information through her and have that directed to the committee and the full board.
Okay, so as I'm hearing, the assessment value, we heard the mayor announce as far as the value of Detroit property going up, and just the whole media piece. Just want to know, is it hard to break down the city of Detroit to the point where each commission district will be able to see an increase? Because I don't believe I've seen an increase. I got a memo saying increase, then oops, mistake. But I'm just saying, so it has remained, at least in my district, at 50,000. But is there some sort of difficulty to break down Detroit?
No, not at all. I mean, that is customarily, I mean, to be able to measure against the 50%, the number has to be known, whether it exceeds or is below the 50,000. So that number is annually computed, and that is available, and it's prepared every year.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay, Commissioner Anderson. Yeah, Commissioner Anderson, and who else would like to be recognized? Okay.
One last question, Scott. The Parks millage is paid into by all property owners, whether it be what classification. So that comes from all,
Yes,
including commercial, because I know City of Detroit has a large number of commercial buildings, of course, of great value, and some of the local communities do also. So I just wondered, everything across the board is assessed for the Parks millage.
yes, sir. That's exactly correct. Every property in real or personal property on both pieces of the assessment roll pays that 0.2442 mils for the Parks millage. So obviously, the larger the taxable value, it follows that the larger the amount would be that they're proportionately paying for for the Parks Millage. But yes, every property shares equally in that. It's sort of like school tax or sanitation pickup or whatever the case might be, whether you throw things away or you put your kids in school or you visit the parks, you're still paying.
Commissioner Clemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment. I have Out County and Detroit. I reached out to Miss Bradford, asked her for my numbers. I received them. So it's really easy to get them. So once you guys have them all calculated, all we have to do is reach out and they can be provided to us, correct?
For sure. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Badon.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's also very important for us to stress the importance of this renewing this parks millage because it benefits our neighborhoods and the city parks. Like I just allocated 123,000 for the city of Dearborn, and they're doing extensive upgrades on some of the parks in the city of Dearborn. And in great cities that have good neighborhoods, they want good parks. So it's very important to stress that when we communicate with our residents before August. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
I asked a question of our council and I'll repeat it for everybody's benefit. This language is, I'm asking Felicia or Alicia. Felicia.
Right.
Too many.
Yeah, right.
It's the same name almost. Felicia, our council, if this is exactly the same language as the current ordinance for the assessment of the parks millage.
So through the chair to this honorable body. So yes, this is the same millage language that will be placed on the ballot that's currently, that was placed last time, that's currently being assessed. It's simply a renewal. No calculations, no information has changed other than the calculation for what will be collected.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, are there any additional questions? Are there any additional questions? Okay, I'm also going to take this as a separate motion and move. It's been moved by Commissioner Baydoun, supported by Commissioner Anderson. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, this action stands approved. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Dr. Still. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Director Alicia Bradford. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 3, a communication reporting a detailed status report on how the Southeast Michigan Community Alliance is spending American Rescue Plan Act.
We will take all of the remaining items under one motion at the end. And at this time, I would like to call Mr. Holmes. That's Mr. Where? Good afternoon. State your name and your title, please.
Good afternoon. I'm DeLorean Holmes, the Economic Vitality Division Director.
Okay, as relates to this item that you want to just give us.
Yeah, so as it relates to this item, SIMCA has currently expended about $987,000 of the $3 million that was advanced as a part of the SIMCA workforce development contract. Out of that, roughly $1,650,000 went to staff salaries and another 180 to fringe benefits for the employees. So out of those employees are 11 new hires to get the programming started. And they've also already started doing the clean slate expungement, which was allowed under the agreement.
Okay. As it relates to this item, are there any additional questions? Commissioner Marecki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So was SEPCA, I can't remember when the commission approved the money going to SEMCA, are they in a time constraint or are they under the group that was approved that doesn't have? Receive and file, but are you happy the way this is all going?
Yes, I believe they're making progress and we don't foresee any issues with the spending expenditures meeting the deadline.
Okay, but you're happy with the expenditure? I mean, because we just see a ton of information, so I don't know.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any additional questions? Any additional questions? Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Just to clarify, this is the same item that came to us, what was it, a month ago? For Wayne County, because I asked about Wayne County Community College. Just trying to clarify what.
Correct. This is the same
Mhm.
program. This is just what their current expenditures have been to date.
Okay, and I guess I'm not remembering, I thought we took the item off of the agenda. Is that correct? Okay, that's why I'm like, now we're back to, okay, can someone explain what we're doing with this item?
Okay, what do you say? Okay, this item here.
No, I
here.
want, the council?
No, first I want to speak to the item on here, then you can speak to
Okay.
her question. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm just saying, so this is so you thought that this item was removed from this agenda?
No,
Okay.
from full board, and they know what I'm referring to.
Okay, you're talking about
Yeah.
the SIMCA, the one that we had that conversation about,
Right.
but they had, but this is just a report associated with funds that have already been administered. That overall amount of appropriate, they brought a contract to us and an action to us. So that was that action for that piece, but keep in mind, we voted on something earlier. Was this action is speaking to the earlier approval?
Trying
Okay,
to
go ahead.
clarify.
Through the chair, I believe that what's before you is the current expenditures of what's been spent.
Right.
However, the administration did submit a few weeks back a contract to reduce the overall amount that was approved for Simca. I believe the original amount was 50 million, and they were going to reduce it by
It was
15, but then they pulled it. So it was never approved by the commission. They
Right.
pulled it. They were supposed to resubmit it. So I guess the question is, what's the status of that contract to actually reduce this amount, since it was indicated that Simca wouldn't be able to spend the funds in the timely manner? It has not been resubmitted to the commission.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, do you have a response to that? Or I see Mr. Brown was making his way.
He's like,
Yeah, the response is, we've recently just met with Simca and got the new agreement in place, and it should be coming before the committee in the near future.
Okay, that's sufficient. Thank you. Okay, any additional question, Commissioner Miraki?
Well, I'm not.
Oh, no, sorry,
finished.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess my concern is that this part is coming before we even address the reduction of the 35 million, well, from 50 million to 35 million. And we were discussing how and who would be the contractors, but then now we're back to spending again of the fund.
No, we
but
did,
we're
let
not-
me ask you this, did we ever stop the contract? Was there any action, stop the contract, or what, the action that you're gonna bring to us is just reducing the overall amount? Is that what's happening?
Well, through the chair, I'm sorry, it looks like Terrence wanted to speak to
Terrence,
provide
you can speak to this.
clarification to Commissioner Baker McCormick's question.
Through the chair, this item is just a budget language instruction that was put
Yeah,
in the
right,
budget.
report.
When we approved the budget for them to provide a report on the contract that they had and what was being spent. So this report is just letting you know what has been spent to date, or whatever this analysis was put together. Is not addressing Simca reduction of their potential contract. I'm
Or the
assuming,
contractor,
or
or any of that.
or the future of that contract.
Okay.
But they have had a contract, and this is addressing the spending that they've done so far with that contract through the budget language
Instructions.
instructions. Just clarification on that, but the department can speak to the future of the contract.
And he stated to us that they've spoke with Simca and that item will be coming to the commission shortly. Commissioner Marecki?
So will it be a reduction that's coming to us shortly?
So, as Delorean mentioned before, there has been renegotiations with the amount due to things changing in terms of workforce development and the demand. So hopefully soon, we hope to reduce that number. That's what we're working on. That'll be brought before the commission next for that final approval for that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Okay, and so,
Commissioner Baker McCormick?
just to clarify, they're continuing to spend, a certain amount of dollars to, I guess I'm lost to understand what the report is discussing items of spending, but we still don't know
No.
what we're doing with the contract at this point. I'm just trying to clarify, what you just said is you don't know what we're doing with the current contract in place, but you have a report about the spending of the contract.
Let me say this, and hopefully this can help.
Can you just let the administration answer the question?
They did, but go
No.
ahead.
Can
Continue.
they answer the question? That's all I'm asking, and maybe it will be answered. That's all.
So, Madam Commissioner, this 3 million was money that was set aside from the original contract that was passed by the commission for certain eligible expenses to get the rest of the Simca contract stood up. As part of that, the expungement, the clean slate, the reinstatement driving privilege were activities that were allowed for Simca to do. With the negotiations for the contract to be reduced, that is still in the scope and would still be an eligible expense.
Thank you very much.
Are there any additional questions? Any additional questions? Okay, next item.
Item number 4, a communication forwarding a report on the revenue collected from the expenditures for the Guardian Building and the First Street Parking Garage for fiscal years 2021, 2022, and 2022, 2023.
All right, through the chair. So this is a report on expenditures and revenues from both the Guardian Building and First Street Parking. For both, the revenues did exceed the expenditures, and as part of what I briefed earlier, the Economic Development Committee, part of the project proposals for the Guardian Building and the First Street Parking Garage are going into our current budget due to those revenues.
Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, let's see. Just next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk.
Item number 5, communication forwarding a report on the number of parking spaces that are leased at below market rates and the possibility of leasing those spaces at or above market rates at the First Street Parking Garage.
So I'm going to ask a question associated with this. I have had conversation with the General Counsel, and I will circle back with my question to our counsel. The statute that I sent over to you regarding setting rates as relates to parking, would this fall within the First Street Parking Garage is a garage owned by the county? Just asking, so how are those rates being determined by ordinance, or because I sent you the statute associated with parking rates? Would this be one of those relevant parts? I'm not ordinance, but the state law regarding.
So through the chair to this honorable body, because the parking and including, I'm going back to the report for the operations of the Guardian Building currently run through Economic Development Corporation, which is a separate legal entity. Many of you have probably heard me say in the past that with regards to their budget and the funds collected, I believe that should be coming through this body, and it's not. I believe legally it's required, and that's not occurring. So when you talk about setting the rates, I take it back to
That
this-
part, right?
Right, this body having the ability to review and approve the budget, because again, these are county facilities, they are taking in county dollars. They're not coming here for any appropriation. So I'll say to the administration, and I'll say this for future reference too, so I won't say it every time they submit a report, that receiving and filing of this report and receipt of this report is not in any way this body acquiescing in saying that you don't believe you have any particular authority over those issues, but we do appreciate now receiving the information because it wasn't historically being provided. But to your specific question, with regards to parking, because it is a county facility, just like you think about the CJC and those parking structures, does this body have the ability to set county policy with regards to parking or some type of ordinance? There's always some flexibility and some things that this body could do. I think it gets a little more complicated because the administration and the commission does not see eye to eye with regards to the authority of the EDC and what their ability is over county finances and revenues and expenditures. But those are discussions that maybe can be had and perhaps can be worked out.
Okay, so the EDC, I do understand that there's some ongoing conversations there, but I was talking about and the parking statute that we had made reference to, and I think that you and the council was supposed, the corp council was supposed to be having conversations on that. So we'll have more offline conversations on that matter, I guess. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, because currently I believe they believe the EDC has all authaughity to,
Regarding
that-
this here, regarding
regarding
First Street,
First
yes, I
Street
understand
in
that, but I'm
particular,
talking
yeah.
about the CJC. And yeah, because it's the EDC doesn't have anything to do with the CJC.
that is correct.
Right.
And I haven't had any discussions
Right,
with anyone,
okay,
so we
thank
can
you.
follow up.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so any additional questions? Any additional questions?
Commissioner
Oh, yes,
Anderson?
Commissioner Meraki and then Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. So just to clarify, us receiving and file has no bearing on the
What-
fact that we would like to maybe have control over the rates.
Yes, I believe that there's still discussions to be had. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
Just a quick question. Just wanted to ask, how many spaces do you think we have that are under market right now? The entire building on First Street?
Through each other, 63 spaces.
Pardon me?
63.
63 that are under? And
Correct.
so there's others that are at market rates?
Correct.
Okay. And I know we have staff parking there right now. Is that going to affect that? If you did go to market rates, is it going to affect them? Or are they going to be staying where they're at?
They'll be staying where they're at.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item number 6, requesting commissioner approval of budget adjustment 2024-35-131, reallocating expenditures in the Juvenile Justice Abuse Neglect Fund.
Are there any questions? Any questions? Next item.
Item number 7, requesting commissioner approval of budget adjustment 2024-35-132, reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Next item.
Item number 8, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2024-35-119, reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions? Next item.
Chair,
Yes.
a quick question. Back up a little bit. I know we rolled through them pretty
Which
fast.
item?
Item 7, no, item 6, I believe it is. Yeah.
Okay, so
Real quick, just wanted to ask, I looked at the notes and it doesn't indicate what convention these are for. And I'm just wondering if we can get some information on that.
okay, is there anyone here who can give this information? If not, okay, go ahead.
This is Ahmed Nasser, Finance Manager at Homeland Security. As far as item number 6, which is $1,000 move, and this is for a statewide interoperable communication conference 2024, and it's totally covered by US grant. And item number 7 is $300 move. That's a women in law enforcement conference in Grand Rapids, and this is for our intelligence agent conference.
Yes. And in anticipation, I know that Terrence and we had talked for that question, because I know you've been asking that. So we have it in the fiscal questions. That's that question is item number 1. Yeah,
Item number 1.
and the fiscal the fiscal response. Yeah.
Okay. And number 8,
Okay.
so I think that's the one we're on right now, right?
Okay. Okay, so let's go. Okay, 1 second. Okay, we're going to
That looks
call.
like- I'm sorry, that's $300. So.
Okay. And so at this point, Madam Clerk, which item are we on for the record?
We are on item number 9.
Okay, so at this point, we're on item number 9. Are there any questions? Any questions? Next item, Madam Clerk.
Excuse me. Item number 10, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2024 35,135 reallocating expenditures in the general fund.
Are there any questions? Next item.
Item number 11, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2024 35,128 reallocating expenditures in the Central Services Fund, Information Services and Technology Fund.
Are there any questions? Next item.
Item number 12, requesting commission approval of budget adjustment 2024 35,147 certifying revenue in the Juvenile Justice Abuse Neglect Fund.
Are there any questions? Next item.
Those are all the items we'll be moving to.
Oh, and the motion is in order. Motion is made by Commissioner Clemente, made by Commissioner Marecki, supported by Commissioner Clemente. I'm sorry, the hands get Clemente. Okay, so at this time, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? These items stand approved.
And just for the record, that's for item numbers 3 through 12.
That's correct.
Item number F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I know of none. Next.
Item G, public comments.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask if there's anyone and ask for you to open up Zoom and on phone lines. And I'd like to ask, is there anyone on Zoom who is asking to be recognized to address this committee?
There are no hands on Zoom, Chair, and there were no emails received.
I'd like to ask, is there anyone present with us today who would like to address this committee? Okay, I see none. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item H, adjournment.
It's been moved by Commissioner Clemente. I did it over. Moved by Commissioner Marecki, supported by Commissioner